wow. And they put him right on my chest, and I said, wow. 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 I did it. I did it. I did it. I did it. I just couldn't help but think about all the things I had been told up until this point, before Joshua, during Joshua's birth, after Joshua's birth, kind of being told like, yeah, you know, this is what your options are. These are what you can do. You can't do what other people can do, and you kind of have to reset your expectations and thinking like, wow, I proved myself right. Like, I knew I could do this. I knew I could do it. I knew that this is what God had for me. Okay. Hey girlies, welcome back. If it's your first time here, I'm so excited to have you. Today we're talking all about birth. I'm sharing my second birth story, which so happens to be a home birth that I had after a cesarean section. Guys, girls, who's ever watching, I am so excited to share this with you guys today. So excited. I cannot even begin to explain what a miracle this entire story was and is. And you won't fully understand unless you watch my first birth video of our oldest son and the cesarean section that I had. That was such a complicated pregnancy, such a complicated and honestly traumatic birth for me. And I was just extremely disappointed. And one of the reasons why I wanted to share this birth story was, number one, because God is so good. God is so good. And Jesus, I say thank you for this story. Thank you for giving it to me. And I pray that this video gives you glory. Yeah, this story is a miracle. And I don't think I would have appreciated what a miracle this story was and is in birth in general if I didn't have my first traumatic birth story. So if you haven't watched that, go ahead and make sure you watch that, because it's going to make this video just that much better. But yeah, I'm excited to share it with you guys today. I will not be crying as much as I did the last one. Hopefully not, anyway. But I'm just so excited to share this with you all. If you told me 2-3 years ago that I was going to have a home birth, I would not believed you. Number one, because it wasn't possible for me. It wasn't an option. And then number two, I didn't really have that like desire or see like honestly the need for it. And I feel like now it's very necessary. So just kind of like quick context why I'm even sharing this story is because I really viewed then and now birth as a rite of passage. It's something that I feel like is a huge staple in womanhood. Of course, not everyone wants to be a mom or is able to be a mom, or to give birth, I should say. But it was something that I felt was very sacred, very precious, that I wanted to take part of, and I felt that it was something that I wanted to experience, and I feel like I kind of got robbed of that through my first birth. So this absolutely was a redemptive experience for me. So I'm really excited to share it with you all, because I know there are so many women out there who want to have a VBAC or a vaginal birth after cesarean section, or they want to have their birth be unmedicated or natural or whatever the case is, and they want it to go a certain way, and they really aren't able to do it, or it doesn't happen for them for just so many reasons. And I'll share in another video why I chose to have a home birth just at all, and specifically for somebody in my situation, which you can divvy that up in a lot of different ways. But I really am just so glad that the Lord gave me the birth that I wanted, that I prayed for. Overcame anxiety, over like deep anxiety, specifically regarding birth. Overcame hypertension, overcame just so many things, but a lot of it was a battle of my faith and my kind of mental fortitude. So birth is just so important, and I really feel like I wanted to share this story because God is so able, like so able. And I feel like there are so many women out there who just kind of fold and resolve that like, oh, birth is just gonna be a traumatic thing, and birth is represented in culture as something that's so scary, something that us women should fear, and it's like the worst pain that you could possibly experience. And I'm sure that's true for a lot of women, given the fact that everyone's birth goes differently and everybody's threshold for pain is different. But I think that birth just, needs to have a better reputation. If there's anything I can do to contribute to that, I want to do that. I'm so glad that I had my unmedicated natural birth at home. And I absolutely would do it again. And I, pray that every woman who wants that experience and is willing to go through it, is able to have it, because I feel like it is absolutely life changing. It gave me a confidence that I didn't know I could have. That's exactly what I wanted to happen with my home birth and with this second birth of our youngest son. So it was so helpful for me to hear birth stories when I was pregnant and before I was pregnant, success stories. So I really want to contribute to that as well, in hopes and in my prayers that it encourages another woman out there. And if the Lord is leading you to have a home birth or to have a VBAC or an HBAC, that I can be kind of an example of that it's possible, or proof that it's possible for you. Okay, so last year, in 2023, our youngest son was born, and he was born at 41 weeks and 5 days, which is an incredible miracle, and he was completely full term, which was redemptive in and of itself, because our oldest son was preterm, was premature, was and just that whole experience kind of made me feel like I couldn't fully produce and grow a healthy baby, and that was not true at all with his birth, so I'm just super thankful for that. But yes, our son Caleb was born at 41 weeks and 5 days. Now, to give kind of a quick pregnancy recap, like the end of pregnancy recap, obviously he was considered late, some would say. My midwives kind of, still considered him to be like in the normal range because it was before 42 weeks, but he was past my due date. But I did have some due date confusion. I've had regular periods all my life, and that's how they predict your due dates. And at first they were going by like my last period for his due date being November 14th. But according to his scans, he was measuring a week ahead, like, consistently throughout all of my scans. So they moved his due date up, kind of saying, hey, based on his growth, looks like he's going to come a little early. So I was kind of trying to teeter in between that. But my whole pregnancy, my mindset was like, let's let him go late. Because I went into this pregnancy kind of afresh and anew, because it was going to be, by God's grace, my first vaginal birth. And whenever you are giving birth for the first time, your body, it's new to your body. So I'd never had any contractions with our oldest son. I'd never really dilated. My body hadn't gone through the process of giving birth naturally, physiologically. So that was my whole mindset going into this. Like, this is like a first time birth for me. It's my first pregnancy, but it's my first, birth. So I kind of went into it with that, knowing like, okay, I'm going to go over, because a lot of first time moms go over their due date. So I kind of ignored, them moving the date up. I think it was kind of like, honestly, an opportunity to be even more anxious. And turns out, because technically, according to like the old due date, or the advanced due date, the further one of November 14th, he was 5 days over that. But if we go by my period date, he was only 5 days over, or a week or so over. So for most part, my pregnancy, like, physically was like pretty uneventful, which is a miracle if you know how my first pregnancy went. So it was really cool to see just how much my body was changing. And I think by like the 25-week mark, I was already bigger with Caleb than I was with Joshua, because I had changed my diet. I had just approached the pregnancy completely different from a natural standpoint, and like that's kind of the whole difference between having a midwife and OBGYN. The midwives are way more involved. They're way more kind of like empowering, and like giving you choices and things that you can do to help yourself. So that was like a really cool thing to see. So this pregnancy was pretty uneventful, like as far as medically goes. I did have there's a lot of things going on. We moved in the middle of this pregnancy. I think I was 34-ish weeks when we moved into our house, because I was planning on having the home birth in our apartment, just because that was my only option. I did consider for like a few weeks, like, should we try to get an Airbnb, how that makes sense, but God ended up really showing up like in huge ways in 2023 with our house, and then obviously with this birth in our son. So that was really cool to see. after we had moved into our house, of course, I'm like not only just unpacking and trying to get our house together, but also thinking about, okay, where can I have this baby? Where would be a good place for a birth pool? I did want to have a water birth because, you know, I went into this very similar to my first pregnancy where I was like, okay, I want the whole thing. Like, that's why I chose Midwives. That's why I went down this home birth route, is because I wanted to have this natural physiological experience. So I was planning on having a water birth, but also kind of going into it. I mean, this is a free-flowing kind of thing. Like, I could have him in the bed, I could have him in the water, I could have him on the stairs. I don't know. I'd seen so many videos of like different places moms give birth at home, so I was very open. But we did find a place, or have a place to put the pool, so I definitely wanted that as an option. So I'm kind of preparing the home, like my mind mostly, for this pregnancy. So Caleb was born on November 19th, 2023 at 12:01 in the afternoon, and that was a Sunday. And that day, even that day, is like so miraculous because we had a lot of things going on. Not only did we move, Tim had started a new job, my dad had just passed away, my mom was here. There was a lot of things going on, and with Tim's new job, he didn't have any paid time off, so we were like, oh man, when the baby comes, what are we gonna do? I mean, obviously he was just gonna have to take time off, and like we're gonna have to figure it out. But we were both really happy that he came on a Sunday, so that worked out really well, and I'm like so grateful for that. But so he came on a Sunday, and he was, you know, pretty much on baby watch, of course, for like the 2 weeks leading up to that. And I had started getting a little bit crampy the week before, you know, going to my appointments, and she's telling me like, hey, if this happens or that happens, and I'm, you know, again, I'm like past 38 weeks, I really didn't know what to expect because I'd only been pregnant up to 35 weeks with Joshua, so I didn't know like what your body does. Was I gonna be able to recognize the signs of like early labor or whatever the case is? So I started getting kind of a little bit crampy, doing some like doing some spinning babies. I saw a chiropractor. I got a massage. I kind of doing some things to prepare my mind and body for this pregnancy, for this birth. So the week before, you know, everyone's checking in, you know, you feel anything yet? What's going on? I'm like, nope, just still hanging out. Again, knowing that this is normal, and also keeping in mind that Caleb was born the Sunday before Thanksgiving. So I wanted him to come before Thanksgiving just because I didn't want him to be like a holiday baby. Not that that's like a bad thing, but it's just a lot of, you know, attention and stuff like that. But I was trying to think long term, like, okay, it's not that big of a deal, you know, in the long run. But yeah, those are just like a lot of like small things on my mind. I had my last week, after I became 40 weeks at one of my appointments, I went to go to the midwife, and she was like, yeah, since you're past due, we're going to do an NST, which is a non-stress test to just check on your baby, make sure that he's happy, because his kicks were good, I felt, you know, my growth was good, all those different things. And the midwives are way less invasive than the OBs, in my opinion. So, and she was actually able to give me an NST just in her office. I didn't have to go to like the hospital, and so that was really like great for me, because if you know, for my first birth I was very like anxiety driven by NSTs. So she did my NST, and it was like just a totally different, and that God even redeemed that experience for me. So she, like, within the first, you know, 2 minutes, she was like, oh, he's happy. You have a happy baby. And that's so different, because with Joshua's NSTs, I would sit there for like an hour, and then they were like, all right, we're kind of waiting for something to happen, and, you know, he's real sleepy, like, let's just keep waiting to see if anything happens. And this one, like, it took no time for Caleb to show signs that he was happy and he was okay in there. So I'm really grateful for that. I feel like the Lord did that intentionally to redeem that whole NST experience for me. But anyway, so that was maybe like a Tuesday or so before, and of course she's probably me like, hey, if this happens, just text us, call us, whatever. And so I was kind of just waiting for things to happen. On November 14th, I started losing my mucus plug, and like seeing that in the toilet, and then like it kept kind of coming over a few days, which I didn't expect that. That's going to be a one-time like out there, but that's not what happened. So yeah, on Friday night, I was like really uncomfortable and like crampy at night, like couldn't sleep well. That night, Friday night and Saturday night, the 2 nights before Caleb was born, were awful for me. Like I was throwing up, I was on the toilet, I was so uncomfortable, couldn't sleep, and then I was like getting nervous because they tell you like, hey, make sure you get a lot of rest and hydration because you need to be energized for birth. And I'm like, well, I don't have anything in my stomach, like I haven't been eating or drinking, like what's gonna happen when I actually go into labor? But I really feel like God was like, you know, giving me that opportunity to trust him with the energy, and that's making me nervous, like, okay, I don't want to have a super long labor, all these things. That was Friday night, crampy, but then I woke up in the morning and I was fine, and I like ate normal and like went about my day. And like I did hear that at night, your body, when your body's like most relaxed, that's when your body's starting to really like shift into gear and like get ready for birth. So like that definitely happened for me. So then same thing happens like, you know, Saturday night, but then it doesn't like stop. So then like around 2 a.m. I'm vomiting, calling out to Tim on the toilet like, help, help. He comes cleaning out my vomit, such a good husband. And yeah, like it doesn't like stop or calm down like it did the night before. So now I get into the tub and I'm trying to like relax myself. They say these things. I'm you know, kind of trying to just get my mind together, like, I don't know what's going to happen. Is this false labor? Like, how many days of this do I have? Like, I don't really know. Like, I need to survive. I need to, like, you know, kind of get through this. Not really feeling any contractions per se, just kind of, like, cramping and being, like, super uncomfortable. So I'm getting in the tub and then, like, realizing, okay, maybe there is, like, some type of, like, rhythm or pattern to these discomforts that I'm having, these cramps. So download the app, start kind of tracking cramps and stuff like that. So it's, like, 3 or 4 hours of this. I'm like, okay, this is, like, you know, the longest it's been. Text the birth team around 4:30. Birth team consists of my 2 midwives and my doula. And my doula worked with them, knows them. Well, she's actually a midwife herself, but she just wasn't my midwife. And I'll explain that, you know, at another time. I had 2 certified nurse midwives because I was VBACing. And you have to have, at least in the state of Maryland, you have to have a, you can't have a VBAC with just a regular midwife. It has to be a certified nurse midwife who is a nurse, like went to school for nursing, worked in a hospital, all of that. So Tim's texting them because we had started a group chat with them a few weeks back, texting them, telling them what's going on. They're like, all right, just, you know, keep us updated, like, you know, about the rhythm of things as it slows down, because they don't actually come until you're like pretty close to labor, pretty close to birthing the baby, which is something that I did not realize until I went through this whole process, because it's way different than OB care. So texting them around 4:30, and that's when I felt like early labor started, because that's what the app told me. The app tracks you or tells you like, okay, you know, things are not really regular. It tells you like how far apart your contractions are, how long they are, things like that, to let you know if you're in if you're in like early labor or which stage of labor that you're in. So when the app told me like, okay, you're in early labor, we told the birth team, and then my doula was like, okay, you know, let us know or let me know when you want me to come. So we asked her to come at 6 a.m. and she lived like a good hour away. So it took her, you know, a little bit to get here, but eventually she got here, and I'm so glad that we got a doula. Because just thinking about the fact that the midwives, they didn't end up coming until around 10:30. Kid was born at 12, which really isn't bad at all if you think about like a lot of people are in labor for 2-3 days. The fact that mine was less than 12 hours, very grateful. Thank you, Jesus. That is a miracle in and of itself. So the doula comes, and you know, she's helping me kind of like get comfortable doing counter pressure. We have worship music on, and just kind of trying to breathe through the contractions, and and it wasn't even like the tightening that people talk about, like this is what contraction feels like a tightening of your stomach. I didn't really feel that. I think maybe because I had really bad back labor, I feel like that kind of distracted me from whatever like a traditional contraction was, but I just felt like very crampy. And I had like significant, you know, period cramps throughout my life, especially when I was younger. And I wouldn't say it feels exactly like that, but it's just as like a kind of like just a discomfort of like, okay, this, like, I don't like this. So she was doing, so the doula's here. At this point, my mom takes our oldest son to his grandparents' house, and so he's out of the house because our house is not big, and just the type of kid he is, I just knew it was going to be more distracting for me. I know a lot of people, one of the reasons why they love having home birth is because their family can be involved in the birth, and like, I wanted that, but not on that level. I think it was going to be more distracting for me, especially with it being my first time really giving birth and really laboring and going through the process and not knowing how I was going to feel or react. I didn't really want our oldest son there, and I definitely didn't want, I wanted my husband to pay attention to me and be able to pay attention to me and not more so for him. So yeah, that was kind of like my reasoning for that. So it's like around 8:30 in the morning. My doula's here, and we're kind of like in full blown like labor mode. One of the best tips that I heard through like my preparation period for birth was to like hide all the clocks. Luckily, we don't really have a lot of clocks around our house, like decorative ones or otherwise, so it wasn't a hard thing for me to do, but I think it really did help for me to not really know what time it was, like how long things were going on. She did tell me like you don't have to track the contractions anymore, and she like told me to stop doing that, so I stopped, and her and my husband took over the communication with like the midwives and the rest of the birth team so that I could just focus, because like it was hard. It was very painful, especially the back labor, but I wasn't really thinking about time. I was just really focusing on getting through one contraction, one pain, one discomfort at a time, and like kind of how to make myself, the most comfortable. Because I did a lot of training on like pain management, or just like how to like comfort yourself and like not really thinking about pain. I'm retraining my brain for what really pain is. So one of the techniques that my midwives recommended, and like the midwife guide that they gave me when I started working with them, was like a breathing technique. And that like little, it's not little at all, the guide that they give you or all of their clients was like one of the best resources I've ever received. As a woman, as a mom, I wish that, all practices had something like that. It was like everything you need to know, everything you need to do, and everything to expect from like the moment you're pregnant to like 6 weeks postpartum. It's so comprehensive, and one of the things in there is breathing techniques. And one of the techniques that I used was counting. So it was like, whenever you feel contraction, count as fast as you can, as high, like the highest number that you possibly can, to distract yourself. So I remember grabbing onto like the headboard of our bed, and I was laying on my side and just counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, and to the point where like I couldn't even hear the word, the numbers, and then like at some points it would just be me counting in my head and like kind of just bearing down, and trying to relax and breathe through it all. I did get a bunch of stuff that I didn't even get a chance to use, like birthing combs and all of that stuff, but that counting breathing technique was super helpful for me. I kept using it over and over again, basically up until I got into the pool. So we did different, she did different techniques with me to like kind of help the baby get in position, because I told her like the back labor is like really, really bad, and I wasn't, prepared or like expecting that, and she was like, she was very calming, such a calming spirit, and such a calming, just like kind of persona with me. And we did different things, like she would kind of hold my belly up to kind of take the pressure off, and like lean up against the wall, do different positions, stuff like that, to help me be more comfortable. But honestly, nothing really worked. I loved having her there because like I'm very much a trier. Like I have to try everything. I have to try to make sure something works or doesn't work. Like I'm not ever gonna be somebody who's just kind of laying around doing nothing, which is a good and bad thing sometimes. But I really loved having her just for that, and it did kind of help pass the time, if I'm being honest. But there did come a point like I got in the shower, because she was like, you can try this, try that, and like I didn't really feel like anything was helping me be more comfortable. I've heard so many stories of women like, oh yeah, when I got in the shower, when I sat on the toilet, I just felt so much relief, and like that, none of that stuff was really working for me. And I was gravely uncomfortable, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna say it was like a deep pain. Like I said, I've felt pain before. I've broken bones, I've gotten surgery, all that stuff. C-section recovery was no joke, but it wasn't like a pain. It was just more of like a very strong like straining in my back. So there's really just hours and hours of this, and of them being present, her making sure that I'm drinking water and Gatorade and stuff like that. I had all I had all my snacks and everything ready. Like, didn't have time for any of that, but it came in handy for postpartum. So just hours and hours and hours of this. So it does come to a point where I'm like laying on the bed, and I start like pushing and like kind of straining, and she's like, hey, let's kind of wait to push until you're more dilated or at a certain place. I hadn't been checked or anything at this point because it wasn't necessary. I didn't ask to, didn't want to be. So I told her, because I was laying on the bed right here, like on my side, had like my robe on, and I was on my side, and at one point it wasn't even like, oh, I feel contraction coming. It just was like all of a sudden my body started like bearing down. And she told me to kind of wait, and I was like, I didn't really do it on purpose. It just kind of like happened, and I let it happen because I did all this work to learn about surrendering and like following, the kind of the lead of your body and your baby and all those things. So she was like, okay. So a couple of minutes felt like anyway had passed, and she was like, hey, like, what would you say if I checked you? Because again, she is my doula, which like the difference between a doula and a midwife. A midwife is like your medical provider. They're the one who's going to like deliver the baby for you, even though that's not even really what happens, but they're the ones who's there on like on a medical or a clinical side, making sure that everything is going the way that it should, that nothing is going wrong. They're checking your blood pressure, they're checking like all of the medical things, versus a doula is really there for like physical and emotional support, kind of like a birth assistant. So that's what she was for me. She wasn't my midwife, but she is a certified midwife for other clients, just not for me. So that was really helpful, and I would recommend that, especially if you're VBACing. And my midwives recommend, if you are having your first vaginal birth, that you do have a doula to help you through, because it is much different than C-section. So anyway, so she's asking me like, hey, how would you feel if I checked you? I just feel like it might be a good idea to see where you're at, since you did have that kind of like bearing down, and that kind of like you started pushing basically. And I was like kind of nervous because I had read all this stuff and seen all these things about how like women get checked and then they get really discouraged because you're in all this pain or you're very uncomfortable, and then like if you find out you're only 2 centimeters dilated, it's like, well, how much longer of this do I have? So I didn't have any plans of like getting checked throughout this birth or labor process. I just was kind of gonna go with the flow. And if you know me, I'm a planner, and that's one of the like really redemptive and refining experiences that I had with this birth, and just birth in general, is like the act of surrender and the habit and the behavior and of surrendering. So I was preparing my heart and mind as much as I could, but I didn't have a plan, because I understood that it wasn't just me in control. It was me. I was participating, Kayla was participating, and the Lord was participating. So it was me making sure that I was doing my part, whatever it is within the 3 of us, to do what I need to do to make sure Caleb got out, the best way that he possibly could. And looking back, I do view kind of Joshua's birth in that way as well. So anyway, so she wanted to check me, and I kind of like was hesitant, but I was kind of like, what, if you think it's best, let's do it. And again, she knows what she's doing. She put on gloves, all that stuff, and she checked me, my dilation, when I was laying on the bed, and she was like, I would say you're 9 centimeters. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, that is awesome. Praise the Lord. Like, wow. I was not expecting that. I didn't really have any expectations. Because even like going into it when labor started, I was like, okay, I'm in labor. It's early Sunday morning. He could be born maybe tonight. He could be born tomorrow morning. I don't know. I'm so glad that I didn't even let my mind kind of try to plan it out and just go with the flow. So she was like, yeah, you're at 9 centimeters. Like, let's call the midwives. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was so happy. So I got off my robe. I already kind of knew in my mind what I wanted to wear for birth, which wasn't anything more than just a nursing bra. I know some people they want to wear certain like cute dresses or like be totally free, but I think that's what I was comfortable with. But anyway, so she was like, her and my husband had already set up the pool, or Tim already set up the pool, I guess, on his own, and the midwives did a good job of coaching him that during our last visit, which was a home visit. So that was already set up, but it does take a while to actually fill up tub with water. I don't even know how many gallons of water that it takes, but it's a lot, and it has to be like warm water. And then like they have this whole setup with, you know, the towels and all that stuff for the floor. So when she tells me like, hey, we're gonna call the midwives, that was around maybe like 9:30ish, because they had got there around 10 or 10:30. I only know this looking back and like reading text messages and stuff. So yeah, so they're busy like getting enough water in the tub, and of course we didn't have a big enough pot at the time, but they made it work, and the water was great. And then like I got in the tub, and I was just kind of trying to get comfortable in there, and I already kind of decided that I wanted to use gravity to my advantage and like try to birth him on my knees, because I had seen how like the whole like knees out, knees in, knees in, ankles out position helps open up your pelvis, and the baby can descend better that way. So that was my plan. I was like, yep, like I want to do everything that I've learned and like put into practice everything that I learned. But I did not birth him that way, and that's okay. I did labor a little bit that way when I got in the tub, and again, at this point, the back labor is still really, really strong. I'm not even feeling contractions like in my belly. All I'm feeling is like on and off back pain, and like honestly not really knowing when to push or when to like kind of do anything. It wasn't as like rhythmic as I thought it was going to be, and they talk about, you know, contractions being in waves and like, oh, you have a rest. And I've heard stories of women like, oh yeah, I took a nap, like a 2-minute nap in between contraction. No, that wasn't like, at that my body was not doing that. And then even afterwards, my doula and I were talking about it, she was like, yeah, you know, your contractions never got, you know, really less than a minute, like at least like that we could record, like it kind of stalled out at a minute. And I think a lot of times if I was in a hospital setting, I think they would have looked at the monitor and said like, oh, you know, your contractions aren't close enough together, you're not ready to push, or you're not ready to give birth yet. And lo and behold, sometimes things are not textbook, because I gave birth to my son and he was completely fine and everything went fine. But anyway, so now I'm in the pool, laboring. We're waiting for the midwives to get there, and I'm just kind of like in labor land doing my own thing, just trying to like figure out best ways to like get this baby out, like how long this is gonna take, I don't know, just kind of trying to like be in the moment, doing a lot of rocking and things like that, and just kind of like, you know, Tim had put on my worship music, I set up a playlist and like all these things. He had set up the Christmas lights for me, like the twinkle lights, and like the mood lighting and everything. He did an incredible job. Like, it's great having a supportive husband, of course. So that was going on, and then like next thing I know, the midwives are here, and they kind of come in very like, you know, quiet. They're very respectful of the space and the environment, and they're asking me like, how are you doing, like what are you feeling? And I could feel his head like coming down. It was, you know, a slow process, and I kind of thought it was going to be like 3 or 4 like good pushes, but that was not the case at all. It was, I think, an hour and a half of pushing, which is still really not bad. If you like, a lot of women push for much longer than that, and it was peaceful pushes, so it wasn't like, yeah. So I'm grateful for that. So yeah, once I got there, you know, I just really wanted him out because my back was hurting so bad, like my lower back area, just like, oh man. And they were like, I don't know, like, you know, just kind of, let's just see what happens and go with it. So I'm on all fours, leaning over the tub a lot with the whole, you know, my legs spread open type of thing, trying to help him come out. Not really working or descending, and like, I think, and they were really encouraging, like, these are good pushes, you can have productive pushes, and I'm like, it doesn't really feel like it, but I'm trusting them because, you know, they do this all the time. So I decided to get on my bum, and like there's a little bench seat type thing in the birthing pool. So I'm like sitting up against that with my arms out and start to push that way, and I'm like feeling more progress. Like, okay. So I start doing like the moaning and the grunting and like using my diaphragm and all that stuff, and they're like really encouraging me. And she's like, yeah, he's, you know, his head is coming out, and like I look at all that hair, and she's like, do you want a mirror? And I'm like, sure, but I'm still like straining, like, oh my gosh, like get this baby out of me. Ring of fire. I'm not gonna say I actually felt that, but they're telling me, hey, if you feel any burning, like it's okay. And I'm just like, can't even really wrap my head around that. I just want him out. And she's like, can you see him? I can't really see his head, but also I'm like, you know, the reflection from the mirror, my husband's right there, he's taking videos, like holding my hand. But it was just such a peaceful environment, and I felt like so blessed to be able just to focus on my son and focus on birthing him and focusing on meeting him. So some time passes, I don't know, and they're encouraging me, they're checking, can't really feel the checks, like I guess they're just checking for his head and stuff like that, and they're just saying like, oh, his hair is so beautiful, like you're doing a great job, just really encouraging me. And after like several pushes, and I was honestly, you guys, so surprised about like how much you have to actually push. I was watching a lot of videos and like listening to a lot of podcasts about like fetal ejection reflex and like kind of baby just like popping out, and I'm learning, of course, like that's not always a good thing. Like it's supposed to be slow so that you don't tear and like everything can kind of happen gradually, but it stinks to be kind of like it kind of like feels like you're stuck in traffic, like okay, it's like inch by inch, like it's progress, but it's like not as fast as just driving. So then like when they announced like, okay, his head is out, and I was like, okay, and I know that's kind of like the hardest part, like the biggest part. And when like one final push, and it wasn't like a big like pop moment, but it was just like a big breath, I felt like. And he was out, and I finally just relaxed, like, wow. And they put him right on my chest, and I said, wow, I did it. I just couldn't help but think about all the things that I had been told up until this point, before Joshua, during Joshua's birth, after Joshua's birth, kind of being told like, yeah, this is what your options are. These are what you can do. You can't do what other people can do, and you kind of have to reset your expectations, and thinking like, wow, I proved myself right. Like, I knew I could do this. I knew I could do it. I knew that this is what God had for me, and it was true. And just meeting him, and he was such a sweetie boy. Oh, such a cutie. I was so happy to see him. And it was so nice that like the whole room, or like the little, loft hallway area that I gave birth in, everyone was just so reverent of the moment. And even watching back the videos before I started filming this today, just seeing how like everyone was saying happy birthday Caleb. Everybody knew his name because I told them beforehand during one of my visits. And I felt so honored. I felt so like respected as a woman, as a mother. It didn't feel rushed. It didn't feel like it was on anyone else's time but God's. I felt so just like, deserving. I felt so just respected, and just so thankful. It was just so. But yeah, so after he was born, and I was just able to hold him, and it's, I just felt so like in control, so peaceful, so like, again, just respected and reverence. And I asked them, I was like, well, what am I supposed to do now? And they're like, you just enjoy, you just hang out. And I think I was just so kind of like jarred, from Joshua's experience of like being whisked off to the NICU, for him being whisked off to NICU, and like having to be, I'm on other people's time, other people's schedule, and like they have to move on to the next surgery, and I gotta get back to my room, and this has to be done, that has to be done, your blood pressure has to be regulated, and it just was complete opposite of that. And I was in my home with my family, and I was being taken care of. I was being focused on, and I loved that. And I just felt like just so like breath of fresh air. And, it's in the middle of the afternoon. We come back in here into this room. Well, let me go back. After we're in the bath, in the tub, start breastfeeding, and that goes well. He passed his APGAR score with flying colors, and he does really well with latching and nursing right away. And then I have to birth the placenta. I think it had been like 45 minutes of me just hanging out in the pool with him, and Tim held him while I did birth the placenta, which like that was a weird experience. Like, I knew I was gonna have to like push it out. I know some people just kind of falls out, but they told me like I had to stand up and like squat and like then it came out, but I didn't actually like feel it come out. But anyway, but yeah, that was really cool, and I really, really, really wanted to see the placenta because I didn't get to see mine with Joshua, but it did have, there were some like problems with the placenta with Joshua, and it was like a lot smaller than it should have been because he was a lot smaller than he should have been. So that was also another redeeming moment from the Lord, so thank you, Jesus, for that. So yeah, birthed the placenta. After like 45 minutes, then they like kind of got me dressed and then or not dressed, but like kind of situated pads and all that stuff that brought me, and they had set up the bed so nice, like with all of the Chuck's pads and everything to protect the bed, and got in the bed with Caleb, and then they like evaluated me for tearing. I did have a 2nd-degree tear, which I know because I was like pushing kind of fast at the end, trying to get rid of the back labor. I don't regret it, and like thank God I've healed great. And I know a lot of women tear from birth, and it's like pretty common. And my midwife did tell me, she was like, "Yeah, I'm not really surprised that you tore because when I could feel, it was very tight." She was thinking like, "Oh, am I gonna need an episiotomy?" And I was like, "I did not know you guys did that." And she was like, "Yeah." And that's also another great thing about midwives is like they do everything, and I'll talk about that at a later time. But yeah, so I mean, I guess it was going to happen one way or the other. I'm glad it happened more like naturally, I guess. But yes, she just stitched me up right here in this bed. And it was like a little pinch, but like it wasn't a problem at all. I'm glad that they were able to take care of it here. And I was so glad that I didn't have any complications. My doula did check my blood pressure a couple of times because you guys know, like, there was a history of hypertension and stuff like that, and like my blood pressure was amazing. I couldn't even believe it. Like, that was another redeeming moment from the Lord. My blood pressure was amazing during labor, during labor and after labor, and in the day after when she came back, because they come to check on you the day after you give birth. So that was just another redeeming moment. And after I got stitched up, they weighed him, and he was 7 pounds, 13 ounces, which is such a miracle and another redeeming moment. Just from my first birth, I was so happy, so grateful. And I knew he was going to be bigger just because like my belly was a lot bigger than it was with Joshua. Even looking at my maternity photos, you can see I had stretch marks. I didn't get any stretch marks with Joshua because he really just didn't get that big. But I had stretch marks with Caleb, which I was like very happy about that during my pregnancy because to me it was a sign of health and growth. But yeah, he was a healthy baby through and through. They did all the tests, with the blood tests and everything like that with him here. And I think within like 2 hours, they left. And we, as soon as we got in bed, Tim turned on the Ravens game and we're watching, NFL football in our bed at home. It was so comfortable. He went out, like, got us like some food. And later that day, my mom had come back home with Joshua, brought him home, and Joshua met his little brother, and that was really cool to do at home. And we, they tucked us into bed, had on our matching diapers, had the bassinet next to us, and we took a nap, and it was amazing. And it's so great not to have to go through all the transfer and the logistics of the hospital. Kind of again feeling control, feeling at ease, feeling comfortable, and your home is just such a blessing. So yeah, that's how our second son was born. The Lord is so good. I just can't, to this day, I cannot say how thankful I am. I cannot say how thankful I am. It's one of those things, like, no matter what happens, like, nobody can take this away from me. I have such a renewed confidence in God. And because you guys know my faith was so shaken after Joshua's birth. And it was all worth it. New confidence in God, new faith in God, and honestly a new confidence in myself. I can't find the words. Just thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. It's something I think about like on a weekly basis. Like, wow, I gave birth naturally, unmedicated, in my home after a C-section in the United States of America as a black woman. as a Black woman, only Jesus could do all of that. I overcame hypertension, I overcame anxiety, I overcame, previous medical situations. And the reason why it's such a miracle to me is because doctors told me, that I couldn't do this, that I wouldn't be able to give birth unmedicated without, all this highly medicalized systems and support, and it wouldn't be safe for me or wise. And I understand why they say that, but God has spoken a better word over me, and I'm living proof that it's possible. It's possible, and I will forever just tell of God's goodness and his love for women and for mothers and the power that is in giving birth. I'm so grateful for God. I'm so grateful for my husband, for our family being so supportive. There's so much change and transition during this time of our life. And I just know that the Lord is so good and that he sees. And if this is a desire that you have, God will see it through in his timing and in his way, if it's his will. But I think so many times, like, we just sell ourselves short, and we just look at the statistics and the data, and we look at what doctors say, and it kind of like limits what the Lord can do. So I'm just really, really, really grateful, and I pray that if this is a desire of your heart to give birth vaginally, naturally, unmedicated, like, it's possible. I am not special. If anything else, I had all these things stacked against me that, like, most likely, how, like, the same thing stacked against you that I did. And, obviously there's women who overcome even more than I do and still achieve, their home birth. It's really just about finding the right provider. Like, that's the number one most important thing. And I know that not everybody has access to certified nurse midwives where they live, so I'm very grateful for that opportunity. But please let me know in the comments what questions you have about home birth. I am excited to bring you all some more videos, maybe about like why I chose to do home birth, like kind of extensively, the pros and cons of it, the pros and cons, like home birth versus hospital, whatever you want to see, let me know. But thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.